Erica Young writes of After College Transition. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is a series of several videos on equipping students to thrive in their transition out of college. Before we get started, I just want to invite you to minimize your distractions while you're watching this. If you're watching this on your computer, maybe shut down some of those browsers, silence your cell phone. If you are on your phone, maybe find a quiet place to engage. I'm going to share some important things, and I really want you to listen and be a part of this. One other little thing too, I invite you to also silence that inner voice that sometimes says, I know all this already, or I've got this figured out. We have so much that we can learn from each other, so I hope you will also quiet that little inner voice inside. I want to start by sharing a story. It's a story of an alumna who had graduated several years ago, and she had a great college experience. Really great time, made excellent friends there, loved her major. Also, really, faith took off for her during her college years. And then she got into life after college, and that transition hit her in ways that she just was not prepared to consider. The loneliness that she felt when all of her friends scattered across the US and she moved to a new city where she didn't know anyone, that hit her hard. Questions about career path. She struggled with feeling like, how did my major set me up for a career, and wasn't sure how to put one foot in front of the other career-wise, really feeling directionless there. She took a job as an AmeriCorps volunteer, and not because of this really altruistic reason of I just want to serve, but more she needed work, and that was an opportunity in the area. But that came with a very minimal income. It was like a service stipend income, and so it was hard to manage funds. On every level, it just seemed like it was hard to make life work. And then big questions of faith and doubt. Where is God in this transition? And can God be trusted in this time? Also, questions of identity. She spent her whole career as a student, and when that role changed, it was really hard. I think oftentimes we confuse role with identity, and she struggled with who am I now that I'm not a student? To put it simply, I would just say she struggled to make life work right after college in ways that she just wasn't prepared to consider as an undergrad. And so if you haven't guessed already, that story is actually my own story. And I would say that my transition, despite having a great college experience, my transition out was pretty rocky. And even though that's my story, it's also the story of Jennifer and Emily and Brian and Tanisha and Daniel and David and so many other students who over the years I've gotten to know and see a trend. I know that my passion for helping students thrive in their transition out of college comes out of my own experience. Career counselor Mark Savickas says that we seek to actively master what we've passively suffered. So there's no doubt that part of my own story shapes why I care so much about this topic, but there's more. Early on in my career with college students, I started to see that same trend. I started to see students struggling in their first steps out of college. And every student's story is unique and different, but an overarching narrative, I think, that describes that first step out of college is it's hard. I just ran into one of our alums who graduated in May, and I said, how's the transition going? And she was like, it's a transition, and that's definitely the word for it. I talked to another student earlier this week, a recent grad, who just said the hardest part has been leaving that tight-knit community. He's been out more than a year and is struggling with leaving that tight-knit community. And my guess is that if you work with students, you're seeing some of the same trends. And that's really what inspired us to get started. When we saw that some of our best and brightest students were struggling in their first steps out of college, we said, something's got to be done, something early on and not after the fact. And so that's what inspired us to get the Senior Exit program started, and it's something that we ran up until the last year for many years, over a dozen years. My guess is you're watching this video because you are eager to get something started, or maybe you have something going and you want to take it to the next level. I can get you there. I want to give to you what I wish someone would have handed us many years ago when we were getting started. There were not a lot of resources out there, things for us to pull from or to even give to students. And so I want to hand you the things that I wish others would have given me. I want to save you the time of spinning your wheels and being frustrated, and take some of the guesswork out. I have a proven process that I can take you through that can help you either get started on an initiative or take what you're doing to the next level. Now, I know some of you may be wondering, does this even work? Like, does it even make a difference if we intervene during the college years in terms of someone's steps out of college? I'm excited to report to you that a number of years ago when I was getting my master's degree, I decided to put my research focus on do these interventions make a difference? And what I found was really encouraging, that not only did they make a difference, but I also learned a lot of things about the program that we were running and how we could make it even stronger, and a lot of that has shaped the ways that I continue to contribute to this conversation. Not only did I learn stuff in my research, but the proof is also in the correspondence from alums after college. I want to share just a couple quick emails from students in recent years who look back on the ways that Senior Exit prepared them to thrive in their next steps, and just share a couple quick stories from that. So this is from David Kim. He says, I want to affirm to you the things that I learned in Exit helped me so much in my discernment process with my career and the community I've been able to build now that can hold me accountable in my relationship with the Lord. And just a little backstory on David. Senior year, he had a lot of different choices for job offers. He had several different offers, and he was trying to discern which one is the best offer to take. And as we talked with DK and sat down with him, one question that we really challenged him with is oftentimes we reduce this transition to like, what offer is going to be the best offer, what has the best price tag attached to it. And we challenged him a little bit to consider the organizational culture of these companies, talk to people who work there, but also which company is located in a place, in a geographical place where he can thrive. And that question really shaped his decisioning to choose to move to the city of Philadelphia instead of some of the other locations where he was considering. And long story short, the job actually didn't work out for him. And one could argue he should have taken the other jobs, but he would reflect and say it's the exact reason that he chose that location that allowed him to step away from a job that wasn't a fit, and he narrowed his search for the next job to that location because of the rich community that he found. And that was such an important conversation to him. He goes on to say, the things I struggled with during my senior year were tough because of how heavy the magnitude of each decision. Students are making huge decisions that senior year, but because of the love and support I received from you and the rest of the Exit team, it allowed me to prioritize the importance of putting Christ at the center of all my decisions. And he just went on to encourage us for the work of Exit. And then a fun story, he and one of his friends who he met through the Exit program, both he and Chance were really concerned that they weren't gonna find friends after college. That's a big concern for many of our students. They met in our program, got to know each other, both ended up in Philadelphia, both checked out the same church and landed in the same small group. And so last year, they graciously offered to drive, it was probably 3.5, 4 hours to be a part of a panel to talk to our students because they knew how much the program meant to them and they wanted to encourage students in the same way. So thankful for those guys and their stories. Here's one more note from a student, Jennifer. Overall, I truly believe Senior Exit taught me the skills necessary to not just survive, but succeed in life after college. And Jennifer's an engineer in the DC area. I love hearing these stories. These are unsolicited emails from students or from recent grads who are contacting us to say, here's how this makes a difference. So yes, it does matter. I have over 14 years of experience working with college students and even had the opportunity to author a book around the topic. Many of you are using this book already with students. It's called After College. And nothing encourages me more than to hear from you and to learn about the ways that the content of this book is connecting with your students, and to hear from students themselves across the nation who are writing me to say what a difference the book is making in their lives. That is my hope and prayer for every person who reads this book, that God meets them and encourages them in this transition. I will argue that the transition out of college is the most difficult transition students face up to this point in their lives, and yet it's the one where students are most under-resourced in it. So I hope that you will join me in continuing to resource students in really great ways. As I talk to many of you across the nation, one thing that I think all of us can agree on is that one of the biggest challenges for 20-somethings is the ability to self-reflect. And maybe we could say it's a challenge for many of us in our busy, on to the next thing lives, we don't always take that time for self-reflection. And so one of the best things we can do for students is to create opportunities for them to self-reflect on their situation, on what's happening, on what's going to happen. I encourage this throughout the course of college, but also especially in that last lap as they're approaching a major transition in their lives. William Bridges, who writes a lot about transitions, talks about the difference between change and transition, and I really like his distinction. What he says is that change is this thing happening on the outside. It's the external thing. Prayerfully, all of our students will persist to graduation and walk across that commencement stage, and so that's the change. Graduation is happening. But the transition is what's going on internally, how the student processes that change, and that is unique to each student. And something that we really want to encourage them is to see that a transition is coming, not just a change, and help them process that transition. I'm going to share 2 ways that you can help students process their transition. One is really low-hanging. If you're just looking to start up a conversation with a junior or a senior, one thing that you can ask them is, what's one thing you're nervous about and one thing you're excited about? Every year when we got our program started, we would ask students how they're feeling about the year ahead, about the transition ahead. And inevitably there was this theme. I'm nervous about this, I'm excited about this. I'm excited and nervous. I'm anxious and I'm also hopeful. I'm scared and excited. So pick up on that theme and ask questions, and that totally makes sense. Students are excited about the new thing ahead, about a future, and maybe putting to work the things that they've been studying for so many years. But they're also nervous because it's a major transition, the fear of the unknown and what's going to happen in this next phase. And so many of them don't have it figured out. None of us have it all figured out, but many of them don't have that job lined up, and they're anxious. So I encourage you, just ask a student what they're nervous about, what they're excited about. I want to teach you another thing that you can use, and this is called the continuum of preparedness. You'll notice there are 5 posters behind me, and each one of these posters represents a different thought about graduation. Starting with, wait, I'm graduating, that would be I'm in total denial, all the way to real world, here I come, bring it on, I'm totally ready. And we like to use this continuum with students to just help them reflect on how they're feeling about the process. So the question I'll ask is, how prepared do you feel to graduate? And I might frame it in terms of, if they got an email tomorrow saying graduation's been moved up to this weekend, how would they process that, and how prepared do they feel to graduate? And inevitably, you're going to have students who rush to number 5. They are so done with college, senioritis has set in big time, and they are ready to run out of the doors of college. And sometimes it's those students that I'm a little bit more worried about, because they may have reduced the transition to just, I'm ready to leave and I have a job lined up, so bring it on. Other students may not be ready at all. They may place themselves earlier on in the continuum, and some of those students are thinking about some of the emotional impact of leaving college. They may not be ready to say goodbye to this close-knit group of friends or leave the community, or maybe they're just not prepared for those loan payments that are going to come. I remember one year I had a student who was like, I think I know what I need to do to be faithful after college, but I'm just not sure I'm going to put one foot in front of the other to do the things I'm supposed to do. That's honest. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to draw out honest conversation for how students feel about preparedness. But another thing that's really important about this exercise is to help students see that the transition is multifaceted. Oftentimes, students will place themselves at a 4 or 5 if they have a job lined up, and they will feel unprepared if they don't yet know that step. It's so easy to reduce the transition out of college to a few key items necessary for graduation. Credits are in, resumes polished, I have a job, I've secured an apartment. As important as those things are, we never want to reduce it to just that checklist, because it is multifaceted. And this exercise can really help get at some of the many different facets of the transition. So I use this continuum we use it in our workshops. I've used it in large group presentations at conferences. I've used it in a senior seminar class. I also used it teaching for a gap year program last year as students were getting ready to leave this very tight-knit community of 9 months. How are they going to process leaving that community? So these are just 2 little ways that you can start to invite that self-reflection in the midst of their course of college or in that last lap. Now, some of you may be thinking, this is great that you've been running this program and that you have all these resources to help students, but I have no time and no money to engage students, and I'm not sure that students even want to be engaged in their senior year. They're very busy. I want to encourage you that you don't need to have a ton of money or a ton of time to intervene in the lives of seniors. Some of it is just knowing what topics are important to bring up, and it's okay to start really small. We came from very humble beginnings. In fact, the Senior Exit program grew out of a very tiny What's Next luncheon. We just gathered students in April of senior year to have lunch and discuss some of the things that we thought were important for leaving well, and our efforts grew from there. So you can start really small, and you can smuggle in content in lots of different places where students are already in their rhythms. And so it's part of it is just knowing what to talk about and then figuring out how to bring that into places in the rhythms of what you already have going on. Now, some of you are saying, that's great, but I can't get students to show up at anything senior year. And we have to acknowledge that senior year is full. They're taking 400 level classes. They're trying to figure out what's next. They may be in leadership roles. And so as long as we're aware of that first, and then this challenge of there's really not a felt need around it, like they don't know what they don't know. They don't know yet what the reality is gonna hit them. And many of you have said, how do you help students realize that there is a need around this? Oftentimes my tagline is, your future self will thank you. And it's true, we're on an uphill battle here trying to convince students to make time for something, even for this self-reflection, when they may not feel the need around it. They may feel a need around, my loan payments are coming in, so I'll go to a workshop on finances, or certain topics may be pressing a little bit harder for them. But for the most part, yeah, they don't know what they don't know. And so I encourage you, if there are ways that you can close the gap between what students expect is going to happen in life after college and what actually happens, that gives them a huge leg up. And we can do that by getting them in front of alums. Some of you are bringing your students into the city and having trips with alums. Others of you are bringing alums to students and allowing them to share their experiences. One of our students says, our students say one of the best features of our program is just how much they get to hear from alums and their success and struggle stories. So if you don't yet have the PDF on how to run an awesome panel, an alumni panel, please send me a note in the contact page or put a comment below. I'd be glad to send you that PDF. But as we get alums in front of students, it starts to help them realize, wow, there is a significant transition ahead. And as we deliver real value to our students, things that they can use right away, they do start to make time for things. And so we'll talk more about that. In the next video, I want to share what just some of the best features of any intervention out there. And stay tuned for that. That's coming soon. We'll discuss just the best features of any kind of intervention. And I'd love for you to just leave a comment of maybe what's one specific way that you're encouraging students to self-reflect in the midst of their full schedules and their busy years, juniors, seniors, anything that you're doing to help students self-reflect, or if there's something you're going to try after having watched this video. I'd love to hear from you. Put a comment down there and I'll see you at the next one.